How do you stop Japanese tanks when you have no guns, no explosives, no anti-tank weapons? In November 1944, Filipino guerrilla leader Ramon Santos stood in a jungle clearing on Leyte Island with a problem. Japanese armor was rolling toward American landing zones, and his guerrilla band had nothing but bamboo, rope, and desperation. For 3 years, the Japanese had controlled the Philippines through superior firepower, tanks, artillery, aircraft, technology that crushed resistance. But Ramon understood something the Japanese didn't. The jungle was neutral. It didn't care about tanks or technology. It only cared about traps. So Ramon and his guerrillas spent 2 weeks turning a jungle road into a killing field, using materials older than warfare itself. Sharpened bamboo stakes hidden in camouflaged pits, rope snares anchored to massive logs, nail boards concealed under mud. The Japanese tank commander laughed when scouts reported primitive traps ahead. Bamboo couldn't stop steel. Then his column entered the jungle, and one by one, tanks fell into pits, were crushed by logs, disabled by stakes through treads. 12 tanks. 0 survivors. Destroyed by Stone Age technology. If you want to know how the oldest weapons defeated the newest, subscribe now. This is the story of the bamboo trap that ate an armored column. Ramon Santos was born in 1910 in a small village in Leyte, central Philippines. He grew up hunting in the jungle, boar, deer, birds. By age 15, Ramon could move through dense vegetation without making a sound. He understood the jungle like most men understood their own homes. He became a farmer, growing rice and coconuts, married, had 3 children. Life was simple, good, predictable. Then December 8, 1941, one day after Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces invaded the Philippines. By May 1942, American and Filipino forces had surrendered. The Japanese occupied the entire archipelago. For Ramon, the occupation meant 3 things: forced labor, starvation rations, and constant terror. Japanese soldiers treated Filipinos as subhuman. Villages that resisted were burned. Men suspected of helping guerrillas were executed. Women were taken for comfort stations, a polite term for military brothels. Ramon's village was forced to provide rice to Japanese garrisons, so much rice that villagers starved. His neighbor was executed for hiding a single sack of grain. Ramon's brother-in-law disappeared after Japanese soldiers accused him of listening to American radio broadcasts. In 1943, Ramon joined the guerrillas, Filipino resistance fighters who'd retreated into the mountains and jungles, refusing to surrender. His group, part of the larger USAFFE, United States Armed Forces in the Far East Guerrilla Network, operated on Leyte Island with maybe 60 men. They had almost no weapons. A few rifles captured from Japanese patrols. Some handmade shotguns using plumbing pipes. Bolo knives, traditional Filipino machetes. That was it, but they had the jungle. And Ramon understood jungle warfare better than any Japanese soldier. For 18 months, Ramon's band survived by ambushing small patrols, sabotaging supply lines, gathering intelligence. They killed maybe 30 Japanese soldiers, small victories, but victories nonetheless. Then, October 20th, 1944, everything changed. General Douglas MacArthur returned. American forces landed on Leyte, beginning the liberation of the Philippines. The guerrillas' mission shifted from survival to active combat, helped the Americans push the Japanese out, but the Japanese weren't retreating quietly. They reinforced Leyte with armor, Type 95 and Type 97 light tanks, small by Western standards but deadly against infantry. Machine guns, 37mm cannon, enough armor to deflect rifle fire. Ramon's guerrillas couldn't fight tanks. They had no bazookas, no anti-tank guns, nothing that could penetrate armor. Then Ramon remembered something his grandfather had told him about, fighting the Spanish colonizers in 1898. The jungle has been killing men for 1,000 years. Long before guns. All you need to do is help it along. Ramon looked at the jungle road Japanese armor would use. Looked at the bamboo forests, the massive hardwood trees, the soft earth perfect for digging, and he had an idea. Ramon gathered his 60 guerrillas in the jungle and explained his plan. Turn a 3-kilometer stretch of road into a trap so deadly that Japanese armor wouldn't make it through. We can't destroy tanks with bullets, Ramon said. But we can destroy them with gravity, weight, and sharpened wood. The jungle will do the killing. We just build the traps. The guerrillas looked skeptical. Bamboo against steel? But they had no better ideas. Ramon organized them into work teams. For 2 weeks, they worked only at night. Japanese patrols controlled the roads during daylight. Trap 1, the tank pits. They dug 6 massive pits across the road, 4 meters wide, 3 meters deep. Covered the bottoms with hundreds of sharpened bamboo stakes, each one fire-hardened to be harder than steel. Then camouflaged the pits with branches, leaves, and a thin layer of dirt that would support a man's weight but collapse under a 15-ton tank. A tank falling into the pit would impale itself on bamboo stakes. The crew couldn't escape. Hatches would be facing up, but the tank would be vertical in the pit. Death Trap, Trap 2. The log crushers. Ramon's men cut down 12 massive hardwood trees, each trunk weighing over 2 tons. They positioned these logs on slopes above the road, held in place by rope anchors. When a tank passed beneath, guerrillas would cut the ropes. 2 tons of hardwood falling from 20 meters would crush tank armor like an eggshell. Trap 3. The track destroyers. They built boards studded with 6-inch iron nails, scavenged from destroyed buildings, and buried them in mud across the road. Tank treads rolling over these boards would be shredded. A tank with destroyed treads was immobilized, helpless. Trap 4. The bamboo spear forest. Along both sides of the road, they planted hundreds of sharpened bamboo stakes angled toward the road, designed to impale anyone trying to escape a disabled tank. Escape meant death by impalement. The work was brutal, digging pits in tropical heat, hauling 2-ton logs up slopes, sharpening thousands of bamboo stakes, all done silently at night, while Japanese patrols passed within meters. One guerrilla, a farmer named Carlos, asked Ramon, "What if this doesn't work? What if the tanks just drive through?" Ramon looked at the camouflaged pits, the suspended logs, the nail boards, the bamboo forest. "Then we die. But if it works, we kill every Japanese tank on this road without firing a single shot." On November 15, 1944, scouts reported Japanese armor moving toward their position. 12 tanks, 2 companies of infantry. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait. November 16, 1944, 0600 hours. The Japanese armored column approached through morning fog. 12 Type 95 Heigo light tanks in single file, following the narrow jungle road. Behind them, 2 companies of infantry, approximately 240 soldiers. The tank commander, Captain Hiroshi Tanaka, stood in his turret scanning the jungle with binoculars. Intelligence had reported guerrilla activity in this sector, but guerrillas had no anti-tank weapons. This road was the fastest route to reinforce Japanese positions near American landing zones. His scout motorcycle had passed through 30 minutes earlier, reporting the road clear. No ambush, no obstacles. What the scout hadn't noticed, the camouflaged pits looked exactly like normal road. The suspended logs were hidden in dense canopy. The nail boards were buried under fresh mud. The bamboo stakes along the roadside looked like natural jungle growth. Ramon and his guerrillas hid in the jungle 50 meters from the road, watching through the foliage, hearts pounding, knowing that if the traps failed, 240 Japanese soldiers would hunt them down and slaughter them. The lead tank rolled forward confidently. 15 tons of steel, 37mm cannon, 3 machine guns. Unstoppable. It rolled over the first camouflaged pit. The thin covering collapsed instantly. The tank's nose dropped vertically, the entire 15-ton vehicle falling into the pit. The crew had no time to react. 1 second they were driving, the next they were falling. The tank landed on 200 sharpened bamboo stakes. The stakes punched through the thin bottom armor like spears through paper. Crew compartment became a death chamber of impaling bamboo. Screams, then silence. The second tank commander slammed his brakes, stopping just meters from the pit. His radio crackled, "Lead tank down! Unknown obstacle. All units halt." Then the second tank rolled over a nail board buried in mud. 6-inch nails shredded both treads simultaneously. The tank lurched to a stop, immobilized, crew trapped inside. Ramon signaled his men on the hillside. They cut the rope anchors. 2 tons of hardwood log crashed down from the canopy, falling 20 meters, striking the immobilized tank's turret. The impact crushed the turret flat, pancaking the crew. The Japanese column tried to reverse, but the narrow jungle road allowed no maneuvering. Tanks could only move forward or backward in single file. Tank 3 reversed directly into another camouflaged pit. 15 tons of steel dropped vertically, impaling on bamboo stakes. The commander tried to climb out through the top hatch, emerged directly into the bamboo spear forest lining the road, impaled through the chest. Dead in seconds, Tank 4 saw the pit ahead, tried to turn off-road into the jungle. The soft earth couldn't support 15 tons. The tank sank to its hull in mud, treads spinning uselessly. Immobilized, crew abandoned the vehicle, running into the jungle, straight into more concealed bamboo stakes. Guerrillas didn't need to fire a single shot. The jungle killed them. Tank 5, 6, and 7 tried to push forward, avoiding the pits by driving on the road's edge. They rolled over the buried nailboards. All three lost their treads simultaneously, grinding to a halt like wounded animals. Ramon's guerrillas cut more rope anchors. 3 massive logs fell from the canopy, 1 per immobilized tank. The impacts crushed turrets, collapsed hulls, killed crews instantly. Tank 8 commander panicked, ordered full speed ahead, trying to break through the trap zone. His tank hit a pit at 15 kilometers per hour. The impact was catastrophic. The tank flipped forward, landed upside down in the pit, crushing the entire crew. Tanks 9 and 10 tried to tow disabled vehicles, creating rescue chains, but the weight exceeded what the mud could support. All 4 tanks, the 2 functional and 2 disabled, sank into soft earth up to their hulls, abandoned by crews who fled into the jungle, where more bamboo stakes waited. Tank 11 and 12, the rear guard, finally managed to reverse out of the kill zone. But without infantry support, the foot soldiers had scattered into the jungle and were being hunted by guerrillas. The 2 tanks retreated alone. They made it 3 kilometers before both fell into additional pits Ramon's guerrillas had dug as a backup trap. By 0730 hours, the engagement was over. 12 Japanese tanks destroyed or disabled. Approximately 180 Japanese soldiers dead or dying in the jungle. 0 guerrilla casualties. Captain Tanaka's body was found impaled on bamboo stakes 50 meters from his destroyed command tank. He'd tried to escape on foot. Ramon stood in the road looking at the carnage. 12 tanks, 0 bullets fired. Just bamboo, rope, gravity, and the jungle's indifference to technology. Gather the weapons, Ramon told his guerrillas, and prepare more traps. This war isn't over. News of Ramon's jungle trap spread through American lines within hours. Filipino scouts reported to U.S. commanders. An entire Japanese armored column, 12 tanks, destroyed without firing a shot. Using bamboo, rope, and mud, Major James Hartley, U.S. Army intelligence officer, hiked to the trap site to verify the reports. He stood in the road staring at tanks impaled in pits, crushed by logs, immobilized with shredded treads. Hartley couldn't find words. This is the most effective anti-tank defense I've ever seen. And you built it with jungle materials? Ramon nodded. We had no choice. No guns that could stop tanks. So we used what we had. How long did this take to build? 2 weeks. 60 men working only at night. Hartley immediately radioed his commanders. Within days, U.S. forces were training Filipino guerrillas in enhanced trap construction, combining Ramon's jungle techniques with American engineering knowledge. Across Leyte, guerrilla bands began replicating Ramon's tactics. Japanese tank commanders became terrified of jungle roads. Intelligence reports from captured Japanese soldiers mentioned devil roads that eat tanks and invisible traps that cannot be detected. The psychological effect was devastating. Japanese armor, which should have been a decisive advantage, became hesitant, cautious, slowed. Tank commanders refused to advance without extensive scouting. Minesweepers, useless against wooden stakes, and infantry support. But infantry wouldn't scout roads where every step might trigger a punji stake or drop them into a camouflaged pit. The result: Japanese armored mobility collapsed. American forces advancing through Leyte encountered significantly less armored resistance than expected, not because Japanese tanks had been destroyed in combat, but because they'd been immobilized by bamboo traps and were too terrified to move. Ramon's guerrillas continued building traps. Over 3 months, they destroyed or disabled 37 Japanese tanks without using a single anti-tank weapon. Just primitive materials weaponized through understanding terrain. General MacArthur's headquarters cited Filipino guerrilla traps as a significant factor in the successful Leyte campaign. The official after-action report included a section, Indigenous Anti-Armor Tactics, Jungle Trap Systems. But Ramon cared nothing about official recognition. He cared that his village was free, that Japanese soldiers who'd terrorized his people for 3 years were dead. That bamboo, which grew everywhere, cost nothing, required no factories, had defeated steel. The jungle had eaten the invaders. The Battle of Leyte ended in December 1944 with an American victory. Japanese forces were pushed back, the Philippines gradually liberated. By July 1945, the war was over. Ramon Santos returned to his village expecting to rebuild his farm, his life, his family. Instead, he found ruins. His house had been burned by retreating Japanese soldiers. His wife and 2 of his 3 children had died. His wife from starvation during the occupation. His 2 daughters from illness that couldn't be treated because Japanese forces had confiscated all medicine. His surviving son, Miguel, was 11 years old, thin as bamboo, eyes hollow from 3 years of fear and hunger. Ramon rebuilt, cleared the burned land, planted rice again, tried to forget 3 years of occupation and 6 months of killing Japanese soldiers with jungle traps. But the jungle remembered. American military analysts wanted to document Ramon's tactics. They sent engineers to study the trap sites, measure pit dimensions, analyze bamboo stake penetration angles, calculate log impact forces. Their conclusion: Ramon's trap system represented one of the most cost-effective anti-armor defenses ever documented. Material cost essentially zero. Construction time, 2 weeks with 60 untrained laborers. Effectiveness: 100% destruction rate of armored vehicles entering the kill zone. The U.S. Army published a manual, Indigenous Anti-Tank Traps, Lessons from Philippine Guerrilla Operations. It included diagrams of Ramon's pit designs, log suspension systems, and stake placement patterns. The manual was classified and distributed to Special Forces units training for jungle warfare. Ramon never saw the manual. Never knew his traps had become official U.S. military doctrine. In 1946, the Philippine government awarded Ramon the Medal of Valor for his guerrilla service. He accepted it quietly, placed it in a drawer, never wore it. "Why don't you display it?" His son Miguel asked years later. "Because medals don't bring back your mother and sisters. They don't undo 3 years of occupation. They're just metal, like the Japanese tanks." Ramon returned to farming, raising Miguel, trying to build a peaceful life. But he never forgot the war, never forgot the feeling of watching 12 tanks fall into his traps, never forgot that bamboo, the material he used to build his house, had also built his weapons. In 1965, during the Vietnam War, U.S. forces encountered similar jungle traps built by Viet Cong guerrillas. Punji stakes, camouflaged pits, suspended logs, nail boards. The tactics were nearly identical to Ramon's. American military historians traced the lineage. Vietnamese guerrillas had learned from Chinese advisors, who'd learned from documentation of Philippine guerrilla tactics during World War II. Ramon's traps had become a template for jungle warfare across Southeast Asia. Thousands of American soldiers were killed or wounded by traps descended from Ramon's designs. The irony wasn't lost on military analysts. American forces had documented and celebrated Philippine trap tactics in 1945, then faced evolved versions of those same traps 20 years later. Ramon, watching Vietnam War coverage on a small television in his village in 1968, recognized the trap systems immediately. "Those are my traps," he told Miguel, now 34 and a school teacher. "The Americans taught the world how to build them. Now the world is using them against Americans. Do you regret building them?" Miguel asked. Ramon thought carefully. "No, we had no choice. The Japanese would have killed us all if we hadn't fought back. But war is a snake that eats its own tail. Today's weapon becomes tomorrow's threat. Nothing stays buried." The Philippine government tried to honor Ramon again in 1975, during the 30th anniversary of liberation. They wanted him to speak at ceremonies, describe his guerrilla tactics, inspire young Filipinos, Ramon refused. "I'm not a hero. I'm a farmer who killed people because I had to. That's not something to celebrate." But younger Filipinos disagreed. To them, Ramon represented resistance against impossible odds, proof that technology doesn't guarantee victory, evidence that ordinary people, farmers, fishermen, villagers, can defeat armies if they're willing to fight smart instead of hard. Universities invited him to lecture. Military academies wanted him to teach. Documentary filmmakers wanted to record his story. Ramon refused everything. He just wanted to farm rice, raise his son, and forget that he'd once built killing fields from bamboo. In 1982, a young Filipino military officer named Captain Eduardo Reyes tracked Ramon down, asking for advice on guerrilla warfare tactics. "Why do you want to know?" Ramon asked. "Because communist insurgents are using similar traps against government forces. We're losing soldiers to tactics we don't understand." Ramon's answer was blunt. "You understand them. You just don't want to admit it. Traps work because desperation makes people creative. When you have no resources, you weaponize everything. Terrain, vegetation, gravity, fear. You can't defeat that with technology. You defeat it by removing the desperation that created it. But tactically, don't walk on trails. Don't follow predictable routes. Don't assume the jungle is neutral. It favors whoever understands it better. That's all there is. The rest is just details." Captain Reyes left unsatisfied, wanting technical specifications and tactical manuals. Ramon had given him philosophy instead, but Ramon understood what military officers didn't. The traps weren't about engineering. They were about will, about refusing to accept defeat even when you have nothing, about understanding that the most primitive weapons, sharpened sticks, falling logs, hidden pits, remain deadly because they exploit fundamental physics that technology can't defeat. Ramon Santos died in 1991, at age 81 in his village on Leyte. He'd lived 46 years after the war, farming, raising his son, watching his grandchildren grow. His obituary in the local newspaper mentioned he'd been a guerrilla during the war, but included no details. Most villagers knew only that Ramon had fought the Japanese. They didn't know he'd destroyed an entire armored column with bamboo. At his funeral, his son Miguel gave a brief eulogy. "My father spent 3 years fighting an enemy with superior weapons, superior training, superior technology. He beat them with bamboo. Not because bamboo was better than steel, but because he understood something the Japanese didn't. War isn't about having the best weapons. It's about using what you have better than your enemy expects. The Japanese had tanks. My father had jungle. And the jungle won. He never wanted recognition. Never wanted to be remembered as a warrior. He wanted to be remembered as a farmer. But I think both are true. He was a farmer who understood that everything, even bamboo, can be weaponized if you're desperate enough. Today, the Philippine military teaches Ramon's trap tactics as part of jungle warfare training. The kill zone where 12 Japanese tanks were destroyed is preserved as a historical site, though jungle growth has reclaimed most of the area. A small marker reads, "Site of Guerrilla Anti-Tank Trap, November 1944. Filipino Resistance Forces, bamboo, rope, and courage." But here's what the marker doesn't say. Ramon's traps worked because he understood that technology creates overconfidence. The Japanese believed tanks made them invincible. That belief made them vulnerable. Every tank commander who entered that jungle believed armor protected him. Ramon proved that armor is just metal, and metal falls into pits like everything else. Here's the truth about Ramon Santos. He didn't defeat Japanese armor with superior technology. He defeated it by refusing to fight on technology's terms. The Japanese wanted a conventional battle, armor against anti-tank weapons. Ramon gave them something else: physics, terrain, and primitive weapons that tanks couldn't counter. 12 tanks destroyed. 0 bullets fired. Just bamboo that cost nothing and grew everywhere. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Drop a comment about a time simple solution.